A big crowd. We'll call our planning commission meeting to order. Start off with a roll call. You ready?
Just didn't say.
Craig McManning, correct?
Here.
Andy Stroudy,
Here.
Joel Samuelson,
Here.
Dan Osborne,
Here.
Chester Hicks,
Here.
Bob Cooper. Jenny is here. Wayne, John Miller.
Here.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we have the approval of our September 20th minutes. Everybody's had a chance to look at them. Have any questions, changes? So, first, approval,
Second.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We have a public hearing for the ordinance, big changes, amendments that we discussed last meeting. And we have the writing that we discussed, Mr. Noel.
Yeah, it's in your packet and, I did put a sign-in sheet out and I'll write down the names of people online. But you'll want to have a motion to open the public hearing too.
Make sure everything's good.
Yeah, it should be this page, it says notice of hearing has the list.
Okay. Entertain a motion to public hearing.
Motion to reopen the public hearing.
Second. Favor?
Aye.
Aye. And
Second page.
if there were, we took the other.
Yep.
What is noted that we're gonna talk about tonight and hopefully come to an agreement on the changes. And I guess we'll do them just at a time, that way we'll go. And as far as the first one is 22-PC-01. Chapter 3, section 030, the R1 residential district. We are proposing to add content to the R1 development standard that reads: for non-conforming lot of record, the minimum rear yard setback cannot be less than 10 feet. And I'll try and explain this a little bit for one that probably wasn't in this discussion, but I know it came up where we were talking about R1 with the 10-foot setback. But it's brought up that we should be looking at the non-conforming lots of record is where we have pretty well contended with our ordinance that the non-conforming lots on this have to go back for a variance in order to get 25-foot setback when 90% of the non-conforming lots don't have the length for that rear yard setback to conform. So they have to get a variance. And the reason for the proposal is if we takes the non-conforming lot record and list them added to that rear yard setback required in R1, that this would alleviate most of the problem that pertaining to the BDA. Any discussion?
I've got after giving this some thought, I think that it'd probably be a good idea to have the, any non-conforming lots adjacent to conforming lots go before the BZA to get permission to do this. If they're all non-conforming altogether, 10-foot setback, that's fine. But people have conforming lots. I think they should have a say in whether they want somebody to build 10 feet away from their property line, 25 feet. Add that to the proposal.
As far as adding verbiage to take the fact that it would need to go to horizontal appeals. If two lots are adjacent, one non-conforming, one
Yeah.
conforming.
Yeah.
That's what you're.
Chester, I just have a clarifying question. And when you talk about adjacent lots, are you talking about lots that they
Touch each other.
touch each other on the rear property line, as opposed to ones that are adjacent on the side property lines? Or both?
Let's see, how is it?
Are you bringing that up, you talking about like if two non-conforming lots, their rear yards are adjacent? Or are you talking
Yeah,
about side yards?
that's why I just want to know what Chester is suggesting here.
Well, the side yards are all 10 feet now, aren't they?
Right.
So it would be a rear yard setback. Or it could be either one. Both. How do you feel about it?
In the conforming lot's still gonna have to abide by the 25
Yeah.
foot setback.
Yes,
So I don't understand why you would need to go to the BZA. If, you know, if the non-conforming is 10 feet, right? That's what we're proposing.
Right.
Yeah.
So what does it matter that the next adjacent property on a piece of conforming, he's still gonna have to go by the 25 foot setback, right?
say that again.
In a lot of cases, your setbacks should be pretty close to each other anyway, I think. Due to the need for the 10-foot setback on the R1 non-conforming. If it's due to the fact that it's shorter, they're not gonna have that extra footage anyway. So the 10-foot's gonna be pretty close to where the 25 is on the adjacent line most of the time.
Correct.
I think that's what you were.
Right, yeah.
My question is, have we noted at any time that we have a non-conforming lot next to an adjacent lot?
That's important.
By
I mean, I
adjacent,
know-
is it behind it?
No,
Okay, it's the
I'd
side.
say next to.
Yeah.
That doesn't really, it's not gonna really exist, is it?
The only place that I've noticed it, and I'm not saying that I've covered every area, but we've got in town places under R1 where there's a street and the property on each side of the street, one non-conforming and one conforming. So it really wouldn't make any difference in that situation.
Right.
Any different. Yeah. You got the street in between too, you know.
Right. If it was a street, you already got 25 feet on the south side anyway. Side yard.
Come to the plan commission, you know, to approve on something like that. Technical review committee, I don't But I think that people, the conforming lots, should, be able to have a say in going on.
Yeah, I think they do, but I think,
Building, you could be building 15 feet closer to the property line and might be a problem. I don't know where we're at, but possible. May never come up, but at least it's in the ordinance.
I understand your concern. I'm not seeing any place that would apply. Not saying there isn't. But I'm not really seeing
And
it.
you never know until,
Right.
I think a good example would be that house that was at the edge of the road that runs behind the root beer stand. It was at one point a prefab small house, and then the new house got built on it. They probably got variances in order to build where they did, but that's what I think Chester's meaning is. It's going from something smaller, to something bigger that the neighbors didn't anticipate.
Right. I mean,
And
we
it's
have that anyway. They're
Yeah.
bigger. They're actually going back on that. It went to BJA anyway.
Oh, yeah, they got approval. I'm just meaning that as an
Right.
example.
Anybody else have anything? Open to the public.
Chester's thing occurs when you have combined lots. And you, in some cases, have had non-conforming lots that have combined and become a conforming lot. So there will occasionally be conforming lots mixed in with the non-conforming in some districts. That's where that's gonna show up. To me, it only makes a difference in thinking about what Chester's saying. It only makes a difference if they are rear yard to rear yard.
Mhm.
Side yard, it wouldn't really matter because you are still have the same side yard protection for the encroachment. So it only happen when it's rear yard to rear yard.
Well, it might also happen on a curve on the lake. Well, I guess that's a lake, so it's.
But still, it's only gonna contribute, with the rear yard to rear yard, you would have that issue. But it's not, like you said, Barry, it's not gonna happen very often, but where the building inspector and building commissioner has forced a combination. Like where there was a vacant lot next to another one, and it's always been that way, two non-conforming. He has been forcing those to be combined, and sometimes those will create conforming lots.
Would be added to still be non-conforming. To add the two
If you added
combined,
two non-conforming at times combined together will create a conforming lot.
Right.
And all the rest of them around it may still be non-conforming because they are the original smaller lot.
so you're saying if the 10-foot setback was allowed on these two non-conforming and combined or either one, and then you combine the property made conforming, they would.
Suddenly
then
that
allowed
person has to do the
10-foot
25
setback.
and the others don't. That's not, you made them jump through that additional hoop and then suddenly they're under a different restriction from the other people in the neighborhood. You can't fix it for everything. I just, in my mind, that was the only place I saw
You know,
that
I
come up.
mean,
as
if
a-
the person
as a
built
potential
on it
thing.
while it was non-conforming, went up to 10-foot setback, they combined property later, then it would be conforming, but you couldn't go back and make them move the structure.
No.
Because it would already be there.
Right.
Right. So it's like hindsight.
I think Chester's comment though was if it's two back-to-back lots and the non-conforming asks for the 10-foot, but the conforming against it should have some, it was forced to conform. So they are going to get somebody closer to them. I'm not sure how often it's going to come up or whether it matters. That was just you
Yeah,
guys are
it's-
pondering
it's
where
an
that might
example,
happen, and
yeah.
that's where it might happen.
Yeah. Anybody else? Keep in mind.
Yeah, you have, 5 people online.
Do they want to chime in?
Anyone online want to speak on this issue? No one's unmuted. Definitely unmuted. I don't think we have anyone.
Didn't remind everybody that they are being. Discussion on that, we'll go to the next. 22 PC -02, chapter 7, section 020, authority part B, and exemption for demolition.
This is the one I wrote you about that I added, because we discovered through the plan director at the county, that in an L1 and C1, C2, there's a handful of zones that require a TRC meeting. And there's exemptions where you don't have to have that TRC meeting, like a roof would be an exemption. And the county exempts demolitions, and they thought it was odd that we require a TRC meeting for a demolition. So the suggestion was you might want to consider exempting that like you do the rest of that list of things.
In other words, they wouldn't be required to come to TRC for demolition. In the past, we've always had the demolition included with the approved permit. Because I mean, soil erosion, everything else is in there. And when you have demolition separately, you have to look at the TRC as far as with the soil erosion, everything else too. So it's like two-phase thing, what we're doing right now, we're trying to take care of it under TRC. But TRC's basically a recommending board to us anyway. And by putting us under.
And
With
apparently
the-
a lot of these weren't coming to TRC as they should have been. So, Ty said we either enforce it or maybe change it in the ordinance if we don't care if it comes up to TRC.
We have a more robust explanation of what all we are entailing in the demolition. But I noticed like they're giving specifics of sign installation, parking lot expansion and stuff. Like a paragraph about how much down the original dirt, what things will get removed. So like what ended up happening with the city tavern, we demolished it after the fire, but we did not go in and clean out those tanks. So like how far do we want to go with that?
Like it's a tanks, I mean, that, like, you know, for whoever's got to be looking at that.
That was
too, so
actually
that was-
cleaned up. Tanks came out there. That was done by the town.
Okay.
So granted, it
As
was-
part of the demolition.
yeah. And then the current owner had it all tested,
Okay.
the soils tested. But we could put what's required by the permit as a paragraph in that exemption list.
Okay.
Kind of like what you're seeing with those other exemptions, if you wanted to do that.
Yeah, just so we know how far do they have to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It makes sense to put it in.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it already there, they have to do that, but to know that they're being told they have to, maybe second or third time. Everything. I agree with you. I understand, but I'm not for. Questions? Anybody in the public have anything to say about this? Kevin, you probably know more about it than we do.
I agree, it's not very often that you need for demolition, but
Most people are turning down to put back.
Yeah.
But in that case, they'll have to apply for the demolition permit.
I think what you've missed in the demolition in the past is how far it goes. And whether you want to include something with that, because you've had several buildings that you've agreed, you know, they get a demolition permit, they tear it down, that they don't tear out the foundation and they leave a hole there. So, but I don't think that's under what you're talking about now. That's a different.
Right, but
That's
know
where the
what you're saying.
TRC though would have
Yeah.
said. And you have to fill it in, you know, so. But that's probably something to pick up someplace else.
But what we're changing here,
I don't think it makes any difference.
yes or no, as far as what's being. Anybody else? Anybody online? Right, everybody understand that one? We'll go on to the third, which is 22 PC 03. Chapter 10, section 020, notice of public hearing. Part A is change in the Culver Citizen to read in local media sources such as the Pilot News. And the reason for that right now, it's specifically naming the Citizen, which is bi-monthly now, I think. And due to notification as far as public hearings, you could put yourself off to 6 weeks or more for having a public hearing because of when it's applied for as far as whatever needs public hearing, need to be published for notification. We are pretty well help to the citizen that's writing. So all we're asking is to change what it says in the Culver Citizen to read, at least change to read in local media sources such as the Pilot News, which opens it up to where more publication because
I did run that question you had about if it could just say local media sources and not mention newspaper. Jim didn't get back to me, but I found statute specifically mentions a local paper or the nearest by paper. There is a House bill up coming up that they're reconsidering wording that, but it still includes newspaper. And if there isn't one that's local, you go to the next county over. So to me, if statute is still mentioning newspapers, we probably should go ahead and keep it as local paper such as the Pilot News.
Yeah. But you said local media sources in order to open that up just a little wider than just restricting to a newspaper.
I think we could put in local newspaper and other media sources.
Yeah.
Because newspaper has to be there.
Yeah, because I mean, you put such as Pilot News, which is
Yeah.
a newspaper, and the media sources does not, and it just. Newspaper.
So would that include internet services also?
Yeah, we already put things on the website and then
Yeah.
put them on TGL and sometimes social media. But by statute, you're required to do newspaper still, so.
Yeah.
We can just put local media and local newspaper such as the Pilot News.
So. You're talking about extending the writing just a little bit more.
Yeah.
Making sure newspapers are mentioned.
Yeah, because I was hoping we could just put the media.
Sources. Which that would probably be fine if you pass the bill, passed it.
Well, even that one is still mentioning newspapers,
Yeah.
so are we protecting those who get their news just via newspaper, I suppose.
Any questions, concerns about this? Ready?
How would we change the wording then? Sorry.
Let's say to read in local media sources and a local newspaper such as the Pilot News.
Are you required to name the paper?
I don't believe so, but
So, I know even the pilots changed their names a couple of times, just.
Yeah.
Or state.
this thing such as.
But it's written in as an example. Not as-
The old one specifically says it has to be in the Culver Citizen, and we're wanting to avoid that.
Just trying to avoid that going forward if that paper goes away.
Yeah,
Or is it
I know,
named?
but if it says such as Pilot News, if it changes and whatever, then we still have a such as. I agree with you.
So it's non-existing.
Existing, is you better, but existing.
Such as a stuff in.
Could that also mean like radio?
All media.
Media, any media,
Media, any kind of media.
could be on the NBC News or
Yeah.
CBS News, you know.
There actually keeps a master list of media sources that we send everything to,
What kind of media?
then we
Ah.
pay to get it in the paper as well, but we send it out
Couldn't you
everywhere.
combine even if it were
Okay, good.
Sun's guy.
plain?
There's even people who've asked to be on that list who don't want to get on the listserv TGL, or they don't get the newspaper and they ask to be on our list. So when she sends it out to the media, which is a list of the media, it also goes out to that list of people who request to be on our list.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it is. I think we're one step forward doing the right thing too.
Keep it mailing to everybody.
Yeah. That's a good thing we're going to do. Yeah. Anybody else have anything of it online? Anybody else have anything to add?
Oh, I guess the other follow-up question is, like you were commenting about the South Bend Tribune, is there a radius limit to this? Obviously, I know we want to do the localist one, but like it was mentioned, if the pilot does go down, will we resort to going to the largest city near us?
If that bill passes, it'll probably require us to go next county over. So if Fulton or Pulaska, I have a paper, we have to go there.
Okay.
Anything else? Entertain a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
First and second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. So it comes to discussion between us as far as if you feel like you. Keep it. We'll start with the R1 non-conforming lots. Any discussion prior to motion or entertaining either one?
Do we need a definition of what a non-conforming lot is? Like,
We have a definition.
do we? I know we have minimums.
We have a minimum square footage.
Right.
We've also got 75 foot.
Yep.
Square foot, but 75 feet is proposed building site is the way it reads. But you're not conforming. You got a conforming
Yeah.
lot, which I don't know about this.
Because I don't see the term non-conforming.
All right. But under, probably the definition.
Well, there's,
Oh, there you go.
page 154, single non-conforming lots of record.
Talking about not the uses, not the lot itself, the record.
Page 154.
Got the 803.
I like that. That answers my question.
This goes into the structures and uses.
So the fact that we should have not been selling non-conforming. One portion of the lot of record shall be used or sold in a manner which diminishes compliance with these ordinance.
So you're not gonna sell half the town houses down. See, I think that's pretty much what it comes down.
If they tear down the thing and just becomes a lot, then you have to sold by a neighbor.
I think it has to. Could just be another empty lot. But Gary can see that.
Says so. Portion.
No, okay. Like,
Create.
oh, I got tenant feet in the back.
Yeah. I had looked at it again.
I think the non-conforming definition is good with the 10-foot setback. I like it. Cleans it up a little bit.
Is that a motion?
Oh, it's just input right now.
Oh.
Unless everybody else got their input in, we'll make a motion.
Okay. Let's have any discussion on it.
That include the joint development. Having adjacent lots.
Does not. I see where you're coming from on it, but I don't know how to word that in such a way that we could make it actionable. Because then you'd have to, like the discussion went to, does adjacent still include one across the street? Doesn't it have to be directly touching? Is it only rear yards you're worried about that buttress each other? Or is it side to side?
Then it seems like you're punishing people in non-conforming lots because they have a neighbor that isn't.
I can see where somebody's coming in and building a new house on a lot. And they're not changing what's already there. You don't want something popping up and moving closer to you. Because now they found they can get that 15 feet, but there's not a lot of houses that are already existing that are 25 feet from you already. So if they tore the house down and decided they wanted to move further back.
Right. And right now, I mean, we're discussing the lot alone. You've got situations where you got a non-conforming lot with a non-conforming structure, where it doesn't get setback.
Yeah, up to.
And these people right now, by our ordinance, that they can rebuild on that foundation.
Mhm.
And what we've got is people building back on that foundation with an addition,
Yes.
and they're getting a variance. Be almost non-conforming, but it's not considered not more non-conforming because they're allowed to build on the same lot. Because they're like, on the same foundation,
Yes,
same footprint.
would that affect? If that situation, would that actually affect somebody getting the variance? Or it would be, on the neighbors, when they put it out, the neighbors' comments and whatnot.
It's always looked at as far as neighbors' position on whichever was. I mean, I can't bring one particular
Yeah.
event up. But I know with taking somebody that has a non-conforming lot of record, and there's a lot up here that some of the same people built the house before the ordinance was even written, and now we have pretty well, with our ordinances, contained it to stay the same, that we've made ordinances trying to rectify houses that are only 12 feet off the street or whatever it be, and they still got 30 feet in the backyard, and that's a conforming. Now we got the non-conforming lots that these people own. They're the 10 feet off. And they could actually move it back within that 25 feet and be conforming all the way around. So it would still be a non-conforming lot, but it would be conforming to the setbacks and proposed as far as the future, as far as for them, as far as what our comprehensive plan is trying to go forward with. I mean, it'd be ideal if you could just erase and draw everything up, everything's 25 feet off the street, 25 feet yard setbacks, and everything's drawn out with a grid that you can lay down.
If my lot was twice as big, yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be great.
Yeah.
But I think when it's all said and done, we need to look at what we're looking at for a non-conforming lot and vote on that, and not if the neighbor's conforming or whatever. That's not what we're voting, that's not what we're looking at here. We're looking at the non-conforming lot and the setback on it, and that's it.
there you go. But I think we do need to look at
Right.
what we'd be
But-
planning for the future, but,
Right.
but I agree with what you're saying right there.
That
That issue should be looked at, but it doesn't.
Right, if you want to look at something, we want to change that or look at some other ordinance that we want to change besides this, we can do that, but right now, this is what we're looking at.
But if you had a lot behind them that was conforming,
But that's not what we're looking at. This is what we're looking at a non-conforming lot, a record and changing the setback on. That's all we're looking at. We're not looking at a conforming lot that's adjacent to it or whatever.
but I think we have to look at how it's going to affect the adjacent properties and the owners of that. If they have a home that's 25 feet away and somebody's gonna build within 10 feet of that lot, I think they should have a say in that. Determined by someone.
So you
The
want to
commission
have
or
the
the
neighbors be
BZA.
able to dictate how far somebody can build from their property.
Just depends on the situation.
That's the whole proposed of an ordinance.
And I don't think
Not
that
the
there's,
argument, neighbor, I'm sorry. Right? I mean, we have to make it more equal. And I know by our ordinance, the way it stands, it was made to be equal. In other words, you got the same right, they got the same right, the same usage, without a body sitting there saying you can go there, but you can't. But with the ordinance set, because of the circumstances, everyone that comes into the BZA has an existing hardship that wasn't their fault, that the property was allowed a record at that time was conforming to anything that was designed. But now, if we look back and we can correct some of these problems, because it's gonna allow, and I know you're looking at backyard, and I know I look at the front yard more. Because the front yard to me is safety issues and everything else when you got a house 6-8 feet on the road. And a lot of these non-conforming lots can actually, the house can be moved back and be farther from the front and not too far in the back. It would still meet a 10-foot setback, when right now we actually got a 10-foot setback requirement for accessory structures. So if you got the accessory structure 10 feet off the property, it's not much difference than the primary structure being 10 feet off the property as far as what you're talking about, as far as building that close. Somebody want to put a garage in your backyard 10 feet off, come out of an alley, but I mean,
And that's what I look at, is it just makes a non-conforming lot space much more useful.
or you without going to the variance issue. And I mean,
You still have 50%, ground coverage.
right,
And
I mean, if we can
there
set
may
this,
be those situations where the adjoining lot in the back, might come up. I'm not saying it's gonna come up often, or maybe never see it, but the language will be there to give them some say as to what happens.
they've got some say anyway. I mean, they can come to every meeting anytime anything's brought up. Also, as far as the building commissioner, we got the interim building commissioner right here. But the building commissioner actually is gonna know that there's a problem ahead of time and can present it to either one of the planning commission meetings as far as we've got an issue. Who's gonna solve it?
How long is their review on permits? Is it pretty much come in and you issue a permit, or do you review?
No, usually, well, it depends. Some of them don't require meetings ahead of time. So like a roof permit, there's 40 some of them in this past quarter that the academy did, and they don't have to go through TRC, et cetera. But for the most part, if you start the process and you do have to come to TRC, or you have to go through Plan Commission or BZA, it's at least 30 days.
So
to
if
take.
So somebody building on a property with this new thing they're gonna have to report to somebody. They're gonna have to say what their plans are.
They have to show a plan, site plan before they can build.
What I'm saying is they're not gonna be issued one. They're gonna go to the review committee.
And it's not just us who reviews the permits, the plan director at the county ends up, he's like the final set of eyes. So if a red flag goes off for him, he gets back in touch with us and says, hey, doesn't look like this one came to your TRC, or doesn't look like this one probably needs a variance because I caught such and such, or.
So it would be moving to the people that are adjacent to the property that's going to be built on, to keep an ear to the ground or a phone call to.
We don't publish
You
to the
don't
whole world
publish,
that there's a permit active.
Permit. I mean,
But if you saw someone building next to you and
No,
you wanted
even
to,
before ground broke, you saw a lot was for sale and it got sold. You could contact somebody and be like, hey, every week, like, hey, there a permit going through on that?
You could ask at any
Right.
point if there's a permit, yeah.
That definitely, I mean, that's your civil right, if you wanna call it.
But if the ordinance says it can be 10 feet, it can be 10 feet.
There'd be no reason, no matter what's.
Right,
the
they
neighbors
wouldn't
say.
have to fill out a
Yeah.
BZA application.
There wouldn't,
We don't have to put out notices for that.
Yeah.
if
We don't
everything
even,
conforms to the ordinances.
Mhm.
And, I mean, the ordinances are written, our
Well, yeah,
building
they wouldn't-
commissioner knows exactly what it is.
Well, they wouldn't be appealing it. I'm just meaning if they're trying to get somewhere between the issuance of a permit and it being finalized, the person can break ground. The time frame.
Yeah.
When they apply to where they get a,
yeah, it could be a couple weeks to several days. Some people take a year because they bring in a site plan, go through TRC, modify something, change the plan, come back to TRC. You have to advertise every time you do any of these meetings, obviously. If it's a BZA case, it's advertised a month ahead of time.
yeah, but if they're falling within the compliance of a non-conforming lot as we're going to change it, they don't have to go to BZA, but they will still be going somewhere.
They'll definitely be going to the online system
Yeah.
that a plan director looks at, that I look at if it's colder.
Tends
So-
to have several sets of eyes.
Yeah,
That's
but that's what I'm trying to find out, what set of eyes
Yeah.
somebody would go to be like, hey, I'm curious if anything's been happening in the lot next to me.
Right now, every non-conforming lot that comes up and tries to build, even if it's non-conforming as far as your setbacks, whatever, the structure non-conforming, it's still gonna flag code. No matter what.
Just because it's a non-conforming lot, not that,
Not well, because what we're doing is trying to keep it from actually being a non-conforming structure on a non-conforming lot.
yeah, no, I understand that. I'm
And
just-
if we can set an ordinance where the non-conforming is reduced, I mean, you can't change the lot size unless you add or take, but you can't take away. Just read that.
Yes.
It makes it more conforming.
Huh?
It makes it more conforming, is what you're
Yeah.
saying.
But if there's no BZA case to be had, you know, I don't know that my neighbor is building anything until I see the posting of the permit.
Yeah, that's kind of
Right.
what I'm trying to find out, is if there's like,
But if it's lawful, then I'm not sure what I see the point in.
right,
Right. Because you do have, I've had people call me and say, my neighbor's doing something, or, you know, and I'll look in the permit system and figure out what it is and tell them, yeah, it looks like he's putting in a fence. Or he's doing a roof or whatever, and he's allowed to.
Yeah.
But there are cases too where they don't like where the truck parked, you know, that's doing the job, or,
But there are signs in my way. Yeah.
yeah, you wouldn't believe the number of costs we get for stuff. Unrelated to all of this.
are they on a public street? Yes.
Private property.
Yeah. That be Chester. Are you all right if we just go forward and go for non-conforming lots?
This is
As
another
is?
vote. We don't discuss where we're gonna, how we're gonna vote before we.
No, a discussion of it.
And
I'm just saying,
just
yeah.
to appease you a little bit, you know, as a member of the BZA, you as a neighbor, if you object to something, that goes a lot with me. If you object to something like that, and
Okay.
Barry will agree with that. So it's not like a slam dunk
Yeah.
that, you know, it's gonna get passed. Right, Barry? Do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Oh, just to
You know,
let you
what is
know.
the hardship is, you know.
Right, exactly, you know, we go through all
And
that.
every variance should require some sort of
Having
hardship.
been on the BZA for many years, I understand what you're saying.
Right.
All right, this time to move on, I will entertain a motion of any kind.
I motion. We approve 22 PC 01. As is,
As is,
as is.
I have a motion
Second.
and second. All in favor?
I,
Aye. Opposed? Yes. Okay. Moving on the demolition exemption, 22 PC 02. Which that got it, and any further discussion needs to be as far as explanation, understanding, agreement or disagreement.
A motion to approve 22 PC 02 with the addition that a paragraph is added to better clarify what is required of the demolition.
Motion,
How, how does this word to clarify?
He wants to describe in that paragraph what is required by the permit. Because those exemptions typically have a description after them. So for, your purposes, we can add that paragraph of what's required by the permit.
Yeah.
that'd be where it says it's an exemption, so it's added as an exemption, and that will be that paragraph.
So with the description of what is to be demolished, how's that?
Yes. Because were we, to pause on that, were we able to say how far we wanted them to go to take down to foundation, or is it just basically saying?
This right now would not be, it's just whether or not we use it as an exemption. As far as further
Tearing down the building.
defining what the process of a demolition, that would probably fall under a demolition.
That's gonna be a
process.
different work
Yeah,
process altogether. It's just put it on the list and say demolition.
this is actually trying to keep it from having to come before the TRC and back, whatever, so. Yeah, process, if it needs to be looked at, then the process needs to be looked at. As Dan said, we've got these things come up, we need to address them, but. Okay, got a first and a second. And
2 seconds?
second one.
Thanks.
Any discussion for voting? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Right. Last but not least, 22 PC 03. The notice of public hearing. And to change, to read, how you got that written down there?
And local media sources and a local newspaper such as the Pilot News.
A motion to approve 22 PC 03 as read by Ms. Monroe.
First and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Was that Andy who seconded? Yeah. I think sure.
Barry, leading back to that second one that Joel put the pending language to be added. Would you all consider making a motion to authorize Barry to approve that if I write that up? So that you have someone for planning commission. So that way, when it goes to the town council, planning commission is,
Well,
you
yeah,
have Barry look at that.
yeah, because I mean, generally, the secretary will actually issue a letter saying that the planning commission has
Made the
made
recommendation.
recommendation to approve this change.
So perhaps both you and Don, if I write that additional description for demolitions, perhaps you guys could authorize Don and Barry to approve that description before it goes to the council. Does that sound okay?
Then there's a motion.
He just did.
Yep, I'll motion that Barry and Don be given the ability to approve that.
Second.
First and second. Favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Right. Yeah, we're trying to keep this thing.
It's a record of motions. That's my typing skills.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Maybe you needed a little bit more work to do that. Great, catch up a little bit.
job amongst yourself.
Doesn't talk about Don.
I think he's
Doing a really great job.
We talk about ourselves.
Guess we can get that out of the way.
Right, I'm caught up.
All right. Moving on. All right, next on the agenda is the TRC review. This is new on our agenda because we are trying, I could speak for myself, but I'm trying, but, I want to be more clairvoyant as far as what the TRC meeting does. And so, this way the planning commission knows more what I am looking. And under our ordinances, PRC is a review committee for the planning commission, which is supposed to mediate, handle a lot of looking into what's required for each thing is reviewed. And so we're kind of trying to keep up with the PRC as a review. Ms. Monroe, she pretty well heads the TRC now, which have the organizer used to. She's stepping in. Give her a high hand on that. She's doing a lot. Treading in deep water sometimes. But if you'll notice in this pack, it's got the head view committee minutes for August, September, which we had 2 in September, and 1 in October, which we had 2 in October.
Yeah, there was one this morning as well that you'll get at your next.
So did it next meeting. But we'll just look at each one, what it was, it gives you an idea what was addressed at the second review committee. If you have any questions, because actually planning commission is a governing body, so we need everybody's approval of these, knowing that you know it and know that it's come forward. This way, that can be, committee can let something slide. Documented.
I really appreciate that. That's right. Nice. Like it.
At some point, the spreadsheet that I gave you, which is a list of all the active permits for the quarter, I will probably add a TRC column and a BZA column, so that if it goes to BZA or TRC because it's required by ordinance, you'll know, and you'll know the decision. It's a good way for me to track what's going on. Because if somebody calls or and there's so many of them, as you can see, that's just 1 quarter worth from this past quarter. And what I found is several of those required TRC meetings and they weren't set up. So we put out some fires by having several in the last 2 weeks. Thanks to Barry and Chester showing up for those, so that we're kind of catching up to what the plan director put on hold. He holds up a permit. If it requires something that hasn't been done, he'll hold it. So there will be, eventually we'll put out the rest of those fires, but for tracking purposes, I'll probably start adding some to that spreadsheet. I know it's a bit cumbersome for you all to look at. At least if someone asks you about a property now, you could look it up on that spreadsheet and know, yes, that is an active permit, or, oh yeah, that one's going to BZA on such and such date or whatever. So as I get my head around some of what's going on with the permits, I will continue to update that and make it easier for you. If there's something you want added to it, let me know. We'll add it.
on my mind and probably not the correct time to bring it up, but have you ever checked the property out there? Probably.
Yeah.
I need to, or you do, and I have not been able to.
You can schedule it and go out there if you want.
Yeah, because I mean, I actually, I didn't do a walk for a week, so.
Which property up there?
Foxley.
Out there on Hot Lake. And it's, well, there's two properties there on the lake that are moving forward without any notice that I know of as far as permits or even whatever. We got some other issues out there too, I want to bring up at some time. There's two properties, one of them right across the old, right next to the hot barn, I call it. But, they put a driveway in a mailbox, they've got a accessory shed sitting there. There's no primary structure, not even sure that the lot even accessible for accessory structure, I mean, for a primary. But people come in with a Winnebago, whatever, some weekends, and whatever they're doing on top of that, I don't know.
Yeah.
But as far as actually having an address to the property and putting a shed on the property, I have.
Yeah.
Reservation about why that was done, don't notice of anything. And then on down, and I think it's actually, it may be, I may be wrong on this, but, Larry Boatman's house. I'm pretty sure it's the one he used on there, but they completely gutted that house. And they're going back. Didn't tear it down, but I mean, it completely gutted and new roof and inside. I mean, I can see those walls put in the house already.
Pop in this week, Barry, we can go out there. Next week I'll be out for the 5 days for a conference and then for an offsite workshop. And if you get a chance to pop in this week, I'd like to see what.
I mean, I like to take that out for sure. 'Cause I mean, two reasons. One, there's no permit. They're doing this. They didn't know. And I think Chuck had actually looked up the property and I think it had just been bought. It was April 2022. So it might be a case where they didn't know they needed one, you know. You have one? Just waving high.
No, I just,
Okay. But, you know, and it is on Hot Lake as well, so I mean, for whatever's going on, demolition, and everything else, I mean. Big issue. With everybody talking, myself included. Everybody look at these, the committee minutes. Have any questions? Maybe we can, I mean, Chester, myself, and Mr. Will might be able to run them up and on.
Well, I think, one of them, we never did a motion to adjourn, so that meeting's still happening.
Oh, yeah, so we can't approve it.
So I see that, we tried to like get done with the case and we all.
Yeah, I think it was too.
But we are now, trying to record those today. My computer got disconnected like 10 times during that meeting.
Oh, really?
So there was like a blip of recording and that was it. But we do want to record them and post minutes for them like we do every meeting.
But you're ready to October 13 minutes in GRC because L1 always comes before GRC for any reason. And you'll see the extension as far as what everything was looked at. This particular property on 2123 Shore Drive. That was one of the most recent.
And very note that the spelling for, Simpson should be Smithson. That'll get changed for our next meeting.
It's changed.
Yeah, I had Johnson in there wrong.
Would you spell that?
It's Smitson.
Minton? Yes, yeah.
Smithson.
Smithson. I heard,
Yeah.
yeah, Smithson. Smithson.
everybody knows that there was a correction. They, for the 13-22.
And I'll bring that one back to the TRC and on next.
And I will be putting these in our definition book for future references, record, whatever. How should I say it? Over. Karen, what do you mean?
I think if you want to keep this on the agenda regularly, maybe it's a motion to accept the TRC minutes and recommendations or
We
something to that
voted that.
effect.
Yeah.
So when we just tack that on, let's putting it underneath with the minutes from the previous meeting. So approval of minutes and reception of.
It'll
minutes
just
from
be,
the-
just another small paragraph, I guess it's put on there, so to be separated from TRC and from planning commission.
Oh, okay, because that was just gonna be, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Put up there, because we're just approving that we're accepting.
Right. We're approving these minutes and
Are we?
accepting the recommendation.
Well,
We're accepting the recommendation by approving.
Yeah, okay, we're accepting the recommendation, so we're not approving, because we're not approving their minutes, are we? We're just accepting them.
That's what I would say, because it's technically the TRC's minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
We're
the
just,
ones who know what happened at the
We're
meeting.
being
You're
provided.
accepting
I can't be like, no, this did not happen.
But we still have to approve what they approved.
Yeah, okay. Approving the motion, not the minutes.
We're approving the review of the TRC.
Yes. Yeah, there, it sounds less clunky.
I knew we had somebody in there somewhere. That's why you're here. But, get that in motion then? Sign it.
I'm not following.
Huh?
I'm not following.
Okay.
So if these are TRC minutes, but I mean, I guess in my simple mind, you have a permit that you want to get issued and you meet all the requirements. And so Jenny issues the permit or you come before the DZA. So I'm not sure what there is for us to approve
Well,
rather than other than just being.
because
on
the
the TRC.
planning commission is the final authority to approve. In other words,
Well, that's
we
what I'm,
can't have the TRC approve and move forward without the planning commission
well,
agreeing
but that's-
or.
my question is, I don't know what it is we are approving.
We're reviewing their approval and then pretty much approving it,
We're approving
Or
or
not.
approving.
or not.
That's still just
We're
doesn't make
either
any sense
approving
to
the
me.
approval or.
I think it's something.
We're over,
We've been doing.
see it, we're over another board essentially. And we
We're
have to
doing-
approve their final.
Yeah, I mean, the
Decision.
ordinance does give the TRC the ability to move these forward, according to the plan director of the county, who said, you formed a TRC to take the workload off the plan commission,
That's,
but at the same time, you're the authorizing body that should be up on what's going on with the permits and who's building what. If you saw a red flag happening at a TRC meeting, you should go, hey, why did you guys approve that one? Or
Yeah.
move that one forward?
if somebody, whatever, have a conflict of the approval.
Okay.
Or whatever, and they came back and what they wanted to take a civil step. What authority would they have to fight for to say that I have this authority? And when it says that the plan commission, review committee for the plan commission, when we're the ones that, we're the ones that took an oath.
Yeah.
And we're the ones that are state authorized to approve. But if it's left with your building commissioner, your town manager, and only two land commission members.
Technically, we're gonna review and approve separate approval.
Right.
Yeah.
And
it's something
really
we should
maybe-
do it.
Yeah.
On the amendment, on the on the technical review committee
Approve their minutes,
approval,
whatever,
it should be, they should make a motion to
with their decision.
recommend
Approve their
approval. The
Or
planning
referral.
commission.
There you go.
Would that be,
That sounds good.
I mean, I know there's situations not, but if you say recommend to approve to recommend, we would recommend to approve
Let's not say that.
pertaining to any issues. I mean, there's issues that the tech review committee
We
meets with.
review and accept the decision of the TRC.
Right. Or deny.
Or deny.
But that'd be in the text.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
put it to a vote,
I
that would
think
be
what's
the text.
Right.
confusing is you have an authorized building commissioner throughout that ordinance who's part of that TRC. And that's always been sort of the, okay, as long as the building commissioner is part of TRC and authorizing it, there is much authorized as this board. But I think what Barry's saying is this board should be better informed of what's going on at that committee and know they're the authorizing body that could be held accountable in a court of law.
That's the whole. Yeah, that shell right there.
Well, so what if we disapproved?
If we disapprove,
Right.
we have to have reason to.
But then what action could be taken?
What action be taken? If we, the planning commission says that we do not accept the recommendation of the TRC, then it wouldn't be accepted. Now, if a permit's already issued,
Well, I probably should not fill out TRC findings in the permit system until after you've done approvals, which will
right,
delay people.
and we have discussed that before, I mean, with the director with yourself, we even said something like that, that maybe the verbiage ought to be there to show. And the verbiage would be if it was to come here first.
Because I've been frantically entering TRC findings on all these held up permits. But like this morning's meeting, I held for waiting for you to accept the minutes, basically, because we told the people who went through TRC this morning, we're gonna have plan commission approve your projects. Those minutes though aren't gonna be ready for you till your next meeting, so we don't necessarily want to hold people up either. That was the problem Chuck had with it, was if I have to bring them all to you, and you have to approve, and then they gotta wait longer.
But I know, and these are my eyes, and this is what I think a lot of times. And this is due to past and not naming names, anything like that. But there has been issues with the building commissioner's authority have made bad decisions. And under those bad decisions, under the way it was never presented. Planning commission was unaware that this was done until after the fact. And it could have been an issue. And when it was brought up as far as, hey, this shouldn't have been done. But even our legal counsel said under the building commissioners, they're going to use him as a representative because he spoke and said this was all right. It actually took any authority that you have or town council or anybody from refusing it because they didn't think they could win in court. So you're actually having one body make a decision that 8 people could be looking at. And if one of us made a mistake, 7 more will catch it prior to that. This is in my eyes only. I'm not trying to be a body of authority like King Cobra. I don't mean that by any means. I just mean that if we have a plan commission that's supposed to make sure everything is done accordingly, we've got protocol to follow as far as what these ordinances are for, what is allowed, what's not allowed. And then you have one person making that opinion. And I mean, it always says that ambiguity is the worst thing you can have in any kind of ordinances or whatever. When you have only one person decide, when you have an 8-panel body that's supposed to decide, I feel like you're shifting to one person can make that mistake. Not saying they did it purposely or whatever reason, but I mean, we're all human.
How often does the TRC meet? And if everything wasn't backlogged, how often would they meet?
Once a month, probably, maybe not even
Maybe
that.
twice a month.
Okay.
And it's usually 1 to 3 cases.
So every permit that comes through does not require a TRC.
No,
Yeah.
anything in an L1 does, with the exception of those exemptions in that list. Anything in a C1, C2, most people doing a site plan want to have it reviewed before they start because they don't want to have to stop or have a stop order put on them. So they'll bring it into TRC because in some cases Chuck would move it on if he knew all those setbacks were met, et cetera. And in many cases, he was moving them on when it should have had TRC by our own ordinance. So that's why we got backlogged. They're sending them back and saying, no, this is an L1, you need a TRC, or this is a specific case that requires it.
And then if we were wanting to try and follow pace with that and maybe have like a small executive meeting to overlook what was passed by TRC. So, help move things forward. So we'd have another get together. If so fact that we'd still have to post the 2 weeks minimum and everything because we're getting
48
together.
hours for TRC public notice and then 48 hours for agenda. But that was the point, I think, in putting 2 plan commission members on TRC was to have somebody with the technical expertise reviewing. Bob reviews it for utility purposes, like if it needs a hookup or how are you draining your property? Because we do have an ordinance that you have to contain water on the property. You can't have water runoff. So Bob will take a very specific approach to them.
Mhm.
Whereas Barry and Chester are really looking at things like setbacks, height, impervious surface, pervious. Are there any issues that they're seeing that could be a problem?
Basically, TRC was formed to, go over the technical details of the, for the approval. So that we don't have to go through all of those things here at the plan commission, item by item, which takes sometimes hours to do.
Yeah.
And
And,
today we were in it for an hour and a half. So
Yeah.
it just kind of depends on, a lot of times it's just one case.
But by bringing these minutes to the planning commission,
Mhm.
it makes everybody here aware of what's being done. And if you can see here, and if there's some red flag, or say something's mentioned that wasn't covered, you notice it, and you have the opportunity to bring it up. And then that can be
For
corrected.
example, we just did a PUD rezoning at this morning's meeting because that requires TRC. We did a property on the East Shore this morning and we did a demo. So all 3 of those were approved by the TRC committee to move forward. You have to have that TRC meeting on rezoning to a PUD before it can come to plan commission. Now we can actually publish a meeting for you all to have next month on that PUD and you'll get the minutes for that.
And you'll get the
TRC.
information that's reviewed in TRC, but they're going through a long time process.
But it is still gonna be a long process because now we're going to have a meeting that you already had and moved forward with. And it was this morning, but it's gonna take the entire month to get to this group that's sitting here right now.
Yeah, because the public notice has to be done ahead of time to get into the paper so many days before you actually in the meeting. You have to have 10 days in there for the public to be able to see that public notice. And you have to have 10 days, the neighbors all have to see it 10 days before as well.
On big ticket items like that.
Right,
For other smaller things like the fiber hut. Like,
yeah,
they wouldn't be able to move forward with that fiber hut until we approved it, or they would go ahead.
now this one's not one of them that would have to come before us, actually, because it's on town property. And the approval
Special case.
technically wouldn't even had to come before TRC, technically, because the council could have approved that prior to that. Still went to
But it's
the motions, still went to the motions because it is structured, even though it's going. So, I mean, this was one that making sure everything's covered.
Yeah.
You know,
But ideally, even if you see the minutes before your public hearing, at least you know we followed the process, we went through TRC. There's nothing in the zoning that said you have to accept and approve the TRC. Because they can move things forward according to the zoning ordinance. Barry would like to make sure that you are seeing those on a regular basis and it's part of your agenda.
So it's more of being considerate, polite, and informing us.
Informational.
The technical review committee is not a subcommittee of the plan commission.
Right.
Okay. So they have, the technical review committee has their own ability to move things along.
And that was mainly because your building commissioner was entering their findings. And those findings get entered in the permit system. Then the plan director at the county knows the building commissioner through the TRC meeting has entered the findings. This is good to go. There's an authorized person to do that in that case.
Is this basically coming up because currently you are interim and acting? Okay.
No, this is something Barry's wanted to do for a while to make sure. Because it felt like there was a missing loop there, like you're not.
Yeah,
putting
there
pen
was-
on it.
There were a lot of stuff going on, L1 in particular, that you're building houses and the planning commission has no idea.
Yeah,
know,
I understand. Yeah,
and-
there's-
Yeah, like Dan asked
I
about
feel
one a
like it's a
couple
very
meetings
important part of
ago.
my job to protect that.
It would have
right.
been easy enough for if you had had the TRC meetings, you would have known, yeah, that one's going on.
So the thing that makes me uneasy is having to vote on a set of minutes for a meeting, which I didn't attend.
Exactly.
You're not-
And I
You're not
appreciate
voting
being
on their
informed.
minutes,
Then what are we voting on?
voting on the approval.
Oh,
So we
in the
saw
minutes,
and we
it's
approved.
Same,
that-
same.
Huh?
Same. Because
Not to
what
approve of the
disapprove-
minutes, we approve of what they did.
That's the same thing. What if I disapprove?
Then you can vote to disapprove.
Well, but I'm based on what? I've got a sheet of paper from a set of minutes at a meeting I didn't attend. I wasn't there. I didn't see the proposal. I didn't see any of the technical documents. So I appreciate getting the minutes. I'm not comfortable taking a vote on something I didn't participate in, since because a vote will have any consequences.
And I thought we were kind of voting more to add it to the agenda every time.
That too, I guess. I mean, that we can add to the agenda either way, but.
Okay.
But,
I mean, I appreciate the minutes. But I don't really see where I need to weigh in on the approval or disapproval of what the technical review committee does. It's not a subset of the committee that I serve on. Like I said, I appreciate having the information, but I feel like if the TRC is approving or disapproving of something.
Maybe we
that-
just
that's
roll
the-
it
That's
into
their right.
So,
Right.
so that you know they're getting them and they're able to read them.
Right.
It's already been approved.
Yeah, maybe we make it part of the building commissioner report and it's just, here's what's been going on at
Here's the-
TRC, I've
Love
given
it.
you the minutes,
Yeah.
yeah,
here's
that's
my
great.
report.
but yeah.
And then if you have questions or.
The only thing to keep in
concerns-
mind, I don't want you to think that they are a completely separate committee. You know, because we are the ones that formed the TRC, Planning Commission. So the TRC, and we are what set for the TRC to look at. In other words, we pass the buck, so to speak, you know, part, we have a subcommittee, basically, to review in order to expedite a lot of these things, but the planning commission has to go through in meetings to look at all through all that. It's like a pre-review.
So it is a subcommittee.
Huh?
So it is a sub.
So it is a subcommittee,
I'm not sure it's really
whatever you
written
want
that
to
way.
name it that,
It's-
but it is a committee formed from the planning commission to do what they do.
It's going to be plan commission.
But, I mean,
It's always going to have plan commission numbers on it.
it's got two planning commission members on,
But it also has
Building inspector.
building
building
inspector
inspector
and town
and
manager.
town manager.
And utility manager.
Okay. I guess in my mind, I don't see that as a subcommittee of the planning commission. And maybe it's just wording.
Right, I mean, I would suggest going through the book as far as what the technical review committee does, or the planning commission stands with the TRC. It'll give you a lot more clarification as what process for. And I know with our TRC meeting, I mean, we formed the TRC meetings to be mainly on PUD. Because PUDs always puts along, anybody want to do a PUD, Kevin knows exactly what we're talking about as far as you go through so much. And our contractors or whoever trying to do the PUD. It's a lot of coming back with a lot of material because one meeting's gonna say, you know, we need this, we need that, whatever. Yeah, it goes back even to your secondary review on the PUD where the building commissioner collects that information and brings it back.
I think a lot of the reason for the TRC was also so that the town employees who have to be concerned about drainage and utilities, and also does the council want that type of building, you know, when you meet for PUD, you're supposed to meet the comp plan and goal. So part of it is if you're not involving someone from the town who's worked on that comp plan and who's responsible for
Right.
it. So part of that TRC was also for that purpose, to keep
Right.
town officials engaged and your town.
And that was
employees.
included what I'm talking about as far as everything that's being reviewed by the technical review committee. You're not sitting there with the Port Plan Commission at 6:30 at night when you're in town. Jelly's when you're at home. Or else you're gonna have to, he never knows when he's gonna be requested, but TRC meeting, that's covered. That's why the PUD was actually taking that, because it does alleviate a lot of running back and forth as far as trying to get, and then being able to schedule a meeting in time.
I think if it's not comfortable for everyone to do it as an approved recommendation or even approved minutes, we make it part of the report for building commissioner. But in the meantime, we can consult with the plan director at the county, has an opinion on it, I think, because they also have a sort of similar type of thing at the county level. Our attorney has weighed in on it as in,
Yeah.
you know, the ordinance says you can, but who gets held accountable
Right.
ultimately? So maybe for now, we just put it as part of the building commissioner report and we go, thanks for reporting.
Yes, I mean, that's fine with me. I mean, to that require a motion either way. We're just gonna put it in with the minutes.
Yeah,
And it's gonna be,
I would be comfortable with that, because we don't, this body has no authority to either approve or disapprove a permit. I mean, that's with the building commissioner or based on action by, well, ultimately it's the building commissioner, but,
Yeah,
and with the approval of the BZA. I mean, we render,
that's kind of how I see
Opinion,
TRC.
advisory.
They're just moving the
Yeah.
permit system forward.
right,
yeah,
That's kind of.
that's the whole part of the designation why it's even existing. I mean, you know, anyway,
that's kind of where my
But,
discussion
yeah.
comes from. I mean, I appreciate very much knowing what's going on, because we haven't always known what's going on. I mean, this county building permit.
good thing.
So,
We just could make a motion. I'll entertain motion not to make a motion. All right. All right. Move on to old business or new business, either one, but I would hold if you got it. I discussed a little bit new, but. Yeah, no problem. Anybody have anything? Anything we've talked about in the past, if we haven't moved on, or we forgot it, or?
has there ever been any follow-up about the gentleman who was going to do the PUD north of Sand Hill? but that all expired.
Bessie,
Mhm.
It's fine.
It's.
the last word extend, they were given an extension for 6 months, I believe, was the 9. And I think that's already expired.
Okay.
And so at this point,
That's it.
hold on. All right, Kevin, you got that?
Just a comment on that, the PUD has expired, so you can't move forward on it, but it is still zoned as a PUD.
Exactly.
Because you didn't rescind the zoning, so it was rezoned as
Yeah,
PUD.
Right.
that's kind of, I knew it was
Yeah.
extended and then getting close to being done. Do we want to revert it back or
That should be looked at.
affect tax
And that
dollars?
may be an ordinance thing to change, that if the PUD expires, it goes back to the underlying or the
Right,
previous
original-
zoning.
Previous
original
zoning.
zoning.
Because right now it's in this weird
It's in a limbo.
space
Yeah, you're in limbo
where
right
it's a
now.
PUD that's not approved to happen.
You got a,
Yeah.
you got a commercial property approved for, under a PUD, and you've got residential approved under a PUD. And if anybody comes up for a variance on something they have in that PUD right now with zone,
But the
That would-
PUD is dead, except for
For the
it's still a zoned PUD.
Yeah.
but right now I'm saying that
However, was it recorded?
it was recorded.
No, that's your
I
building.
found another property
commissioner's
rezoned that
issue.
has not been
Yeah.
recorded yet. So I'm guessing if that was done in the last 5 years, it wasn't, I bet it wasn't recorded.
On the chart.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yep.
Yeah, it was
Um,
recorded.
Did it happen under Russ then?
No,
No, it was under,
it would have been under Chuck, but it's listed as PUD on this plan.
How old's that plan?
March
Surprised it was
17th,
recorded.
2021.
actually, I mean.
Oh,
the-
Years old.
I don't understand why it wasn't recorded. Right, as far as this other property straight yet, was there some kind of,
The one on Main Street
Yeah.
that you guys, it was not recorded.
what was lacking on that being recorded? Just the fact that it was not submitted to be recorded, or?
Yeah, your building commissioner has to actually go record it.
I mean, the council approved it. And where does the council go from there? It goes straight back to the building commissioner to have it recorded?
Yeah, and then generally they hang a copy of the recorded up here.
Yeah.
Until the map gets redone, and then they hang up there until we recreate the map. So 3 or 4 of them will hang up there, and then we'll go, okay, let's get a new map.
Like, what happens to the building commissioner if they don't get it recorded?
We'll find out if I don't get it recorded before your next meeting.
I guess I was wondering what steps could have been taken. I didn't place you. Or it's actually, what would have been the steps for the town council to move forward? Other than what Bergman had been.
They can get it recorded. I mean, I can go get it recorded.
Yeah.
I just gotta get a copy of it. Our attorney can get it recorded too.
And they'll have for
Is that
business.
how you had for business?
Just weird thought.
Yeah, I don't know if it's, still an old, you know, whatever it is, old business or member concern. But my question was, what happened at the court hearing on 415 Lake Street?
Yeah, so, the judge asked to be given, he wanted 30 days to respond with his decision. So we should hear between now and early November.
Why would be 30 days after I had 3 months?
He reviews, they presented their cases on the 4th,
Okay.
even though we had the material ahead of time, but they presented, and then he said he needed up to 30 days. He usually does get it done with whatever he's promised, but we haven't heard yet.
Did you attend any of those?
No, I was out of town.
I'm just curious, everybody had the feeling they got from it, whether.
I think it was optimistic on
100%.
Jim's part.
It was smiling. Any new business? Buddy, Any issues need to come up?
Yeah, I'd just like to ask Jenny about
There you go.
this proposed Dunes project
Sure.
south of town. I've been getting some calls on it and, obviously the town got a grant and they're going, how can the town get a grant on something that hasn't even been approved or had any public input or rezoned or any of that?
Well, the discussion had been going on with the redevelopment commission that they wanted to come in and do this housing project, and they were partnering with the landowner and forming an LLC, which happened pretty recently. The reason it came up for Ready is our Ready committee was also discussing whether or not to apply for Ready grants, and we kind of went through some project ideas. But with Ready, you need a private investment of 60% of the total project. So if it's $1 million project, that private investment is 600,000. You can apply up to 20% of your project costs. That 20% has to be a local match by government. So if you wanted to do a community center, for example, if you had someone who said, oh, I'm willing to put 600,000 into the movie theater and we'll try to get a $200,000 grant and a $200,000 match, we could have done the movie theater. So when they approached redevelopment, I knew housing was one of the qualifying projects for Ready. So I said, well, it's possible we could get a Ready grant. And our redevelopment commission had been discussing with the contractor this project, and they had a joint session between the contractor, redevelopment, and our town council as well, about the project. If we want to put housing in, we have to get utilities to the property. The town already had to get utilities out to the Howard property, which is on the south end of these lots, because we annexed in all of those lots years ago. So in those discussions, the contractor was saying, well, to pay for utilities and infrastructure, we want to do an agreement with redevelopment. Could they invest in helping with that cost? And when you do that through redevelopment or TIF dollars, you either bond it or you can do what's called an expenditure agreement. And so they were having those discussions. And the more redevelopment would have to invest, obviously, the more it costs town. So we decided, let's apply for a Ready grant and see if we can get some of those dollars to put toward the utility infrastructure costs. So their first phase was going to include infrastructure, utilities, a clubhouse and some amenities, and the first set of units. So we decided to apply for the Ready grant to help pay for infrastructure utilities. And the estimated cost of that was $3 to $4 million. So you can apply to try to get Ready up to a certain percentage. And that total first phase was just under 10 million. So we could apply for just under 2 million. We applied for like 1.9, I think. And we received 1.3. Our redevelopment commission had to make a commitment though to match those dollars. So if you win the grant, your local municipality, in this case, our redevelopment commission matches the grant. So he would receive that much toward paying for utilities infrastructure. And to get utilities off through that property and infrastructure through that property to build this out. Our goal was if we get some grant dollars, it's less that a redevelopment would to invest in it. So it wasn't that it wasn't discussed, it's still early planning. I mean, they only formed the LLC this past fall. And we submitted a preliminary site plan, which, that could likely change depending on what the build out becomes. But that preliminary site plan, we got like literally the week before it was due. Keep in mind, Ready also rolled out in 6 weeks in our region. So once South Bend Elkhart received their 50 million, they did their own, got their ducks in a row, signed their agreements with the state, got their money, and then they rolled it out to the region and they said, you have 6 weeks to get it turned in. So that's how long we had to put together an application. And they went and did a road show around the counties that are part of our region, said, this is how you can apply for these dollars. these are the projects that qualify. We were required to attend one of those. Someone in our region had to attend so that they could educate other people in the region on what you could apply for. And we decided to go in on housing because we didn't have another project that had a private investment. And we got the 1.3 out of the 1.9 that we applied for. That property still, right now, for redevelopment to do an agreement with them, they have to create a new TIF out of it, which is something we've started. And that'll have public hearings with our redevelopment commission and our town council. It will have to get rezoned because they're likely to do it as a PUD. That will have public hearings. And the people who have inquired about it, I've told them this is still early stages. It hasn't even gotten to the public hearing stage. And of course, we'll have those as they're needed. But it has been discussed with redevelopment and council. And we've had a housing committee, a Culver Crossroads steering committee. Before that, we had the Stellar Committee. Our comp plan talks about the need for more diverse housing in Culver and more housing in general. So it's not like housing hasn't been a hot topic in Culver. It has been, and we've got a developer who wants to do one. Before that, Bestie did, and it never happened. And if he had stayed in it, we would have likely applied for him. Kevin at one point was going to do an application with Ready, and I think we did in round one, which is the only reason we qualified to do it when they rolled it out. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to do it because they weren't accepting new project ideas.
So if the town plan to run the infrastructure regardless, or is that all contingent on whether the students project is finally approved in some fashion?
Yeah, we would eventually at least get the utilities to the Howard property,
Okay.
but we originally were gonna go down the road.
Uh-huh.
And in fact, the project that CMD wanted to do at Tamarack Road, that our BZA approved a variance for, that project needs utilities as well, and they've petitioned to be annexed in, because that's still outside our town limits. So in taking that in, we'd have to get utilities to that end of the
Okay.
south end of town.
And so I think,
But with a housing development, we'll likely enter that property differently than we would
From the
going
road.
down the road.
and so I think what you said answers the second part, but we would have the Ready Grant regardless of whether the Dunes project is approved or not.
Yeah, we could have applied for utilities for the town
Okay.
if we wanted to.
Kevin's shaking his head now, so that's,
I mean-
maybe you don't understand my question.
You wouldn't have had the 60%.
Yeah, that's
So you
the
wouldn't have made
thing. You need a private investment
Okay.
for the project, so it would have had to been like, oh, Dan Osborne's volunteering to give us 600 grand to take utilities. It's out there. Yeah.
We don't have.
So I'm sure I have a house and put condos on my property. Can you give me some money to do that?
Maybe.
So,
Well, redevelopment, keep in mind, is different than me, the town, giving property taxes away. Redevelopment, that's mainly what they invest in, is utilities and infrastructure. It is meant to grow your community. It's meant for economic development.
You don't go with it.
It sounds to me like this thing is a slam dunk go regardless of what anybody thinks.
Well, he could build it with or without a grant.
Right.
Just like he did Maple Ridge.
I got.
Yeah, but then what about the PUD and all that? Is that originally, even if we didn't approve of that, it still goes to the town council? And it sounds like the town council's all in on this already. We've really, whatever our opinion is not really gonna count. That's what I'm reading into
Of
this.
course it does. Anytime we have a public hearing, it counts.
Right, well, I understand everything you
And
said, but
There's
it just seems that the cart was before the horse a little bit, as far as I'm
Well, this
concerned.
time we're ready though, Dan, it's like, we can't control when the grants come out and when the dollars come out. So when a pool of dollars comes out and we actually have a planning committee. If we're actually looking at it and studying it and trying to figure out if we've got any project we can do with it. And generally, if you have a project in your comp plan, or like if we knew we wanted to do a community center in the last 3 years, we go, like our beach lodge, let's go try to get a grant for that because we know we want to do that project. We know we want to do housing. And he could build it with or without the grant dollars. He could even try to build it without investment from TIF dollars. Redevelopment, generally, that's what they invest in. That's part of economic development, it's part of growth.
Kevin, you had something you want to add to that?
Just that this is already zoned R2. You guys zoned it R2. So the overall concept he could do without the PUD. You guys are going to be deciding on how much you agree to the density that he's going to increase it by the PUD. And the PUD helps the redevelopment commission do a TIF and recapture the money. So that's where the difference is.
Right.
Because you guys have already said that housing density is allowed on that property.
Right.
As far as having multifamily, having smaller lots and everything that goes, it's into the R2, so multifamily is allowed. But he's going to want to do like Maple Ridge and make it even denser. That's where you guys get your say for the PUD about how far you want him to
Yeah,
do.
because I think originally didn't they talk about like 300 units with apartments, condos, townhouses and homes, correct?
And he could do that kind of stuff with the R2. The R2 is already there.
Right, yeah. Well, I didn't realize, I'm sorry, I went up on the zoning, because it was agriculture, I just assumed that it was.
Well,
But it's,
Agriculture.
Well, when it was annexed, I think that's when it went from S1 to R2.
yep.
And with TIF, if it's not a PUD and you're not capturing TIF dollars, then the beauty of making it TIF, if we create a new TIF area out of that land, over 25 years, you're capturing the TIF dollars that go back to redevelopment. So when they make an investment to build something out, or often it's in infrastructure and utilities, they can get that money back through the TIF dollars. So they can do an agreement with the builder to say, all right, we're willing to invest 70% of the TIF over 15 years, let's say. And we will hire Baker Tilly to assess what is that going to generate. If they do put 200 units, we know assessed value of those units, what will it generate in TIF dollars? And then how much of that TIF money would you have to put into a bond to pay for that utility infrastructure? So if it's 70% over 15 years, well, they capture that 100%, they keep 30%, 70 goes for the cost of utilities and infrastructure, and then 10 years worth they capture. After 25 years, it can't be TIF anymore. It goes to the town's property tax, assessed value, et cetera. So that's how TIFs work. And it's, our PUD TIFs are the ones that generate the most funds that our redevelopment commission captures. Maple Ridge, the Cove, like certain PUDs are the ones feeding redevelopment. And you have businesses in the TIF too that are paying into that, but the biggest producers of TIF dollars are coming from PUDs.
So PUDs automatically drop out of TIF, or TIF just automatically expires on all within the TIF district?
Right. TIF is
Every TIF area has its own expiration of 25 years. So some of our TIF areas are going to expire in 9 years, some in 14 years. A new TIF area would expire in 25 years.
Okay, and those areas have to request to be put back in TIF, or it can automatically be mandated on
no,
them?
once it's done.
No, if the town, if redevelopment wanted to try to put it back in TIF, it goes through this whole process. There's public hearings. Any agency or entity that would be affected gets notified when those hearings occur too. When you create a new TIF area, or you add or take away from the TIF area, we did that last year. We had some properties in our TIF that were generating a negative value.
Yeah.
So you can remove those from the tip. You still, within a tip area, that you have, everything has to be adjacent to everything.
Yeah.
So if you pull a tip property out and there's two no longer adjacent, then you might have to make the road tip between them. It's just a, drawing on a map, basically.
Just connecting.
But last year, when we did that, we were pulling out negative revenue properties. There were just a few of them. And then, you go through public hearings at the redevelopment commission and at the town council. And if there's an agency that could be affected, they're notified and they're given how they could be affected, the amounts. Basically, we did this entire study of our TIF. We paid over $20,000 to have that done between Baker Tilly and Barnes and Thornburg, because we had a redevelopment commission member who thought we were losing tens of thousands of dollars by not doing it. It ended up, we saved about $2,000 a year by taking out those negative value properties.
One more thing about this redevelopment, everything I'm talking about, they got that approved. The BCA, as far as the warehouse on the corner, right there in Tenray.
Mhm.
But then they put that on hold. It wouldn't move forward
Yeah.
because they're waiting on,
Because they started this partnership and decided to do this housing development.
Right.
That all came into the works last year, and we want to do them both at the same time while they've got all their equipment out, their supplies out.
as far as the warehouse and the subdivision. But is this gonna move forward long enough for, they never required a permit or anything for that warehouse?
No, they're petitioning to be annexed, and they will. I'm asking them to come back for a second BZA hearing, because when Chuck brought that to the BZA, because it had expired, our plan director at the county believes it should be re-advertised, even though they're not changing their site plan for that. It still should be re-advertised and go back again, where you guys go, yes, you can have your extension.
Expired.
So even though you granted the extension at that meeting, we're probably gonna re-advertise it, have them come back.
Because originally.
I didn't understand that.
Oops, sorry. I thought it was gonna be something.
Originally, they were gonna pay to run the utilities down. That was the agreement, right?
Yep.
Larry?
Yep.
They were gonna do it.
No, they were
50%.
already talking to, redevelopment.
I know that they put, their attorney told us that they were gonna pay to run the utilities down.
They sit there and said, I know they've been paid
Right.
at least 50%.
Right.
Well, it's because they
Now they're
we
waiting,
had
now they're
run
gonna get
into the
free.
Howard property,
Right.
so they were
So
talking about,
they were trying to negotiate 50-50 instead of.
I think they were gonna
They knew they were
go
required.
they wanted us to go to the Howard property. They would get it from Howard over to that property, which is across the street from that.
But I was just wondering over the approval of that. It passed. And if they didn't ask for a permit, how does that still stand? It's supposed to be,
They came
Started.
back to BZA because that expired, and the BZA
We
said,
approved it again.
we'll approve it again.
We-
However, Chuck didn't advertise that to be
What?
done.
I didn't know you had to if it expires, you have to advertise
The
it
plan
again.
director
if it
says
expires,
yes.
you have to, yeah.
Because we didn't do that on the Schmidt property.
It wasn't
He never
an extension,
advertised it
it
again.
was
He had to come back.
Right.
On what?
On the Schmidt property.
It's like it.
He had to come back and he never advertised for that. Remember that?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so you'll probably see them come back in November at BZA.
But can they just put it on hold like that? I guess I'm.
Put one on
understanding.
hold.
It was approved to go ahead, but they put it on hold.
Chose not to spend money. They're hoping they can save money.
I know what they're doing. That's obvious, but I'm saying as far as it's
Yeah.
already approved and you put it on, how
If a
can you put it on?
permit expires or your BZA period of time or whatever.
If it does, then you definitely have to reapply.
Well, I had a permit expire. It was a 2-year permit on general renovation. We just went and renewed it. You can go
You
back.
can.
and renew it. In
Due
this
to
case,
circumstances, even ordinances says due to certain circumstances, what caused that delay or whatever, then it can be extended. But if you're delaying it just because you want to wait, and see what that something else comes up on, I don't think that's gonna be reason enough to renew it. They definitely have to come back and reapply.
Well, that's what they're gonna do
Yeah.
now.
Right,
They thought they were doing that when they came back
the
to
second time,
get the extension.
right.
Yeah.
It's just Chuck didn't do it the right way.
Yeah, I just. Those were in court, I can say.
Well, thank you for explaining that to me. I
Yeah.
understand a
Yeah.
lot better
Yeah,
now. You know, I appreciate that.
yeah.
I know Dan and I talked about.
Yeah, we
this,
talked about it, you know.
And I saw a whole lot what you were saying, but I didn't know in depth as much of what you were.
Right, exactly.
I told Dan the same thing as
And-
far as a lot of what you said.
The contractor did have a joint meeting with town council and redevelopment to go over their preliminary plan.
Right.
Because they are looking for support in that infrastructure utility costs. And there was a joint meeting even after discussions with redevelopment. So I came in with we could apply for a ready grant and save some dollars if we happen to get one,
Mhm.
because we do have the private investment. And he would have to commit to that private investment. South Bend Elkhart region that disseminates those grant dollars, there will be contracts that have to get signed and we all have to commit. So the match dollars are committed by resolution. He has to commit the private investment dollars. They're not just gonna write him a check and go build your stuff.
But this is basically between the town and the developer.
Yeah, if
I
you,
mean, it won't have to come back before us.
right, Regional Cities was also a grant and Kevin's property, when we did the Sandhill Farm and the paddocks out there, there's regional city dollars and that required a local match as well. And it was up to 400,000 was what the grant. Our match wasn't quite 400,000, so we didn't use the full grant amount. But part of the utilities and that went into building Sandhill and paddocks, exact same type of grant. And it's being disseminated through the RDA, which is Regional Development Authority of South Bend Elkhart Region. They're also the ones who did Regional City Grant.
So is it gonna come in front of us as actually like a vote for a PUD? Will that be something that comes up? And will we have any say on the size and the scope of the project at all? Or have any input? Or are they gonna come and say, hey, this is what we want to do? And can we say, okay, we want this or prefer this?
It's like any,
We have to go through the same process.
it's a site
in
plan,
because
you have a primary review, a secondary review,
Yeah,
just like you did 415.
I mean, they'll
Okay.
present a site plan.
Right, just like they did
And-
like 415.
Yeah, just like any of them, yeah.
Okay.
And, I mean, but it seems like it's gonna be approved before we approve. You know what I mean?
More things in there.
But it's,
Right,
I
yeah.
guess we just have to go through the process. I don't know.
Well,
I mean,
it is
it's-
true that the town council who helped create
They still have,
the comp
you
plan.
still have the final say,
What they do anyway.
right,
Always.
regardless.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
And
we
a
only recommend
PUD has to
PUD.
meet a goal of the comp plan. A major goal of that comp plan is housing.
Right.
A major goal of the stellar plan is housing.
Oh, yeah.
A major goal of the current plan that we're working on is likely to be housing because it keeps emerging as a
Right.
huge issue in Culver.
Right.
But it's a huge issue everywhere in
Well,
the state.
just that the real estate values in Culver are so high that, you know, where are all these people gonna come from and what are they gonna do? If you have 200 units times 4, that's 800 people. That's like half the population of Culver.
Our population for year-round residents has actually declined.
Like 100 people.
Even with
Yeah.
the additional housing of Maple Ridge, the Paddocks and Sand Hill, year-round population has declined since the last
So
census.
what is exactly the population of?
According to the last census, it's under 1,400. Yes.
Before that was like 1,500.
It's
Right, I
thir-
thought it was
it's-
15.
It's 13 something now, according to the census number here in that.
Is that winter or summer?
Well, come on.
Full-time. Full-time, not the, full-time.
How much is that?
But I wasn't trying to be disrespectful as far as saying that about the PUD.
get your.
As far as,
Well,
it's like-
I can cite-
That next to
I mean,
I'm gonna cite one statistic that we learned through our Stellar application and through our study of the region when we did regional Stellar. In the eighties, when I was a kid at Culver Academies, 98% of faculty and staff lived in town. Today, it's less than 40%. Culver Community School, same thing. 98% lived in town, now it's less than 40%. So it's clear also when we did a study of our region and when we did Stellar, the number of workforce people commuting into town to work here is over 1,000 people. The number commuting out is less. So when I was driving to Mishawaka to work at Troyer Group, I was one of the only cars leaving the town, and I would pass like literally 100 of them just on 10 leaving town. So the idea is capturing that workforce to live in your community, to spend their money in your community.
any kind of
Because
economic development.
if you don't have year-round residents spending their money in the community, that was the idea of Stellar. Stellar Town year-round was to attract year-round residents.
That'd be interesting. I think a lot of that has to do with property values too.
Oh, good.
How many people can afford $500,000 homes in Culver?
Not in work here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, the ones
That's-
that got that don't work here, for sure.
Yeah.
Unless they don't compete.
But they pay taxes.
Not many.
Okay.
However, it's different from Sand Hill. Well, not Sand Hill, that's a market value apartments. It's different from the paddocks in that it is not subsidized housing. Not an IHCA tax credit housing. It's just development.
They didn't PUD under the, trying to go toward the affordable housing. That we need to, that is what. Done with that one? Anybody have anything else in the business? No new business? I just want to add that I appreciate everybody's looking at these ordinance amendments and stuff. And just to let you know, there are a few more that I know of that need to be looked at. I've been still looking at it. And I just appreciate everybody. We got a good system, but we've got screws loose in other places. And you know, it just takes a little looking at whatever. I mean, I'm proud to have the members here that we've got. We haven't had it in a long time. We've lost some good ones, but we've got some good ones back. We appreciate every one of you. Would like to look at these in the future. Going thing naturally anyway. Especially with the changing development around Culver, and we've got probably more than most communities anywhere for the variety of things going on. We got the lake people, you know, that building new houses all the time. We've got changes in town as far as, and we do get new businesses change. And I mean, you can see that change a lot as we go. And I just think that we need to stay on top of this stuff. I know we've got old ordinances that are still used that probably haven't even looked at any changes years ago, you know. But I just appreciate everybody's workforce here. No other news? Whatever, we'll move to our interim building commissioner report.
All right, I gave you that spreadsheet, but the gist of it is there were 78 permits issued in the last quarter at a value of $41,201,007.90. That probably speaks a bit to the property values that Dan spoke of moments ago. There were 6 1 or 2 family dwellings, 6 accessory structures, 1 commercial addition, 2 decks, 6 demolitions, 4 fences, 6 residential renovations, and 44 roof permits, and a partridge in a pear tree. Most of those roof permits were Culver Academies updating a bunch of their properties. I do not have access to fees and fees collected yet, so I will report on that. I've requested it from the county. If they give me the ability to do it, I'll be able to generate that report. If not, I'll just count on the county
Right.
and give us that. I think that's what Russ was probably doing. They do send Julie Cal a report that will show the money we're owed, and that gets done, like, I believe quarterly as well, so.
As far as
Once I
the monetary part
track
of it,
that
I mean,
down.
I don't feel that the planning commission needs that. I mean, appreciate it, but
Yeah,
not necessarily needs
Bruce
it.
used to report it because
He
when
did.
he was commissioner, I think you guys technically hired him back then, whereas Chuck reported to the pleasure of the town
Right.
council.
Right,
So I'm sure he was justifying the expense with fees collected. To my knowledge, Chuck did not fine anyone. Otherwise, I think I would have known about it,
Right.
so that's currently 0.
that might be something need to be on.
If we find, you know, some properties like the ones you mentioned earlier are building without permits, then we definitely should
Yeah.
follow Russ's example. And
'Cause I
that's,
know we've discussed that before, as far as penalties, you know, that should be put on, and I know Chuck had always asked the question, how do I have the authority to find who's gonna do whatever, you know,
Yeah.
who makes them pay me? But they would, but I know under even a stop work order on something that's, you know, I'll use the example as far as Kevin's fence issue, you know. If a stop work order was ever done at that time when the fence was already put there and stop order could have been put in at that time, you got that whole thing resolved at that time with just a stop work order. And I feel like, I know you're just in here, I'm gonna get somebody maybe that would take care of this stuff. But
well, it
I
helps
think they need to be
our-
aware that that penalty has a purpose.
Yeah, one thing that we will probably also do is make sure that Bob and his crew get these reports that are in the spreadsheet, because one thing I know about their team, they keep an eye on properties in general, so if they see grass is 12 inches high, they call me, go, Jimmy, you need to use this letter for this address. I just whip out the letter. It would be the same thing if they kind of knew what's active permits, if they saw something, they're like, someone's building there and I don't think there's a permit. We get a heads up.
That's what I want.
And that's also why you need to have a copy of them, because you guys are very aware of what's going on around you, and people are gonna call you when they have questions about stuff,
Do they
like
answer?
the housing development or anything else. The other thing I wanted to let you know about outside of this type of report, the comprehensive planning team has been our Crossroads Culver team. I've mentioned this in meetings in the past, but I've also put it out to the public several times. MACOG is working with us. They're a transportation planning organization to do our comp plan. They've done a lot of stakeholder meetings. They've done surveys in the community. Over 300 people answered the survey. That comp plan will outline priorities for Culver. So if you would like MACOG to engage with Plan Commission, they will probably engage you on land usage as part of the planning process anyway. But if you want to have them here to do a stakeholder meeting with you, I can get them on your agenda. And I think it's a good idea because comp plans have that whole land usage section. There's also how is Culver prioritizing its work? Well, that's why they survey people. And we've had over 300 answer that survey. So if people say housing is a big problem here, or we need a community center, we want our movie theater, whatever it is, that's what gets put in a comp plan is what your community wants to see happen. And that's what should be driving a lot of our decisions, is what people say we should be doing.
As far as that meeting with us, I mean, is there a timeline we need to get into this?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I'd like to do that before end of year, like your November, December meeting. Because, we've been in like this discovery stage and the public engagement stage for several months now. And you may have seen things on TGL or survey on Facebook or Karen putting out notice about survey. We even had, postcards all over town that you could fill out what you dream for Culver. We took them to Lake Fest, we took them to the golf courses, you name it.
Yeah.
We're trying to get that input from people. But ideally, I'd like them to meet with you as a stakeholder group.
I mean, I would suggest December. Because I think
It's usually a slower month for you
it's over
guys.
a month, and from what I'm hearing, November's not
And
gonna
I'll make you happy food for that month, so you want to be.
I thought you were supposed to do peanut butter for tonight.
be. Uh-oh. I
Joel,
remember.
Joel said.
I wasn't gonna bring it up.
That's not that.
I'll make it up
What?
to you
You
at
call that?
PTA on
She's doing
Thursday,
her
how's
report.
that?
That's perfect. He's not here. That's fine, yeah, thank you, that'll work.
You guys called her out during her report.
That's.
I told the clerk at lunch today, I said, I probably should go home at 4 and bake for the plan commission, and then 4 o'clock rolled around and I'm in there. And she comes by my office at 5:30 and says, well, I see you didn't make it home. I was like, oh my God. So I was too happy working, sorry. Anyway, that's all I have there.
All right, if I have any questions. Or either the finance manager or the.
Oh.
interim.
One other thing, the town council authorized me to be building commissioner, but it might, as an interim, use the word interim, please, but it would be ideal if this body did as well. To just,
I
we're
did-
good with you
I
doing
did
your
say
work,
interim, but yeah.
yes, temporary or interim, whatever you want to call it,
Acting.
temporarily.
Maybe we should use that word. No, I mean, Jenny done a pretty good job, believe me. And she stepped right in, she full bore, sort of come figure out what's going on. We've had some, we've had some past building commissioners didn't learn as much as what you have, for short period of time. That may not be a compliment, I'm not sure, but it was meant to be. Do you have anything? Citizen input,
You need to make a motion on Jenny being
Yeah.
interim building inspector.
I make a motion that we approve Ginny being interim.
I'll second.
Yeah.
What are we approving you to do?
The interim building commissioner, that you're okay with it.
we're okay.
Town
with that.
council is,
But you don't work for us.
We're just saying we don't mind.
I'm not a fan of scary motions if the council approves it. We're an advisory body.
I just don't want you to not be okay with it.
I think we can probably, agree that we're all very happy that you're in this job and this is more information than we've received.
Interim baker.
Oh, no,
We-
you're not just interim baker, you're permanent baker.
We will address you as building commissioner. If you wish.
All right, sounds good.
Your Excellency or Serene Highness, whatever you choose. I think very signaling is time for motion to adjourn.
We're getting really close. Nobody has any,
Citizen input,
somebody has any, concerns or input?
going once, twice.
Nope, other than going
Online.
Any
online.
citizen input online?
There is the.
I don't see anyone meeting or anything.
Fine. With that, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
Got first and second.
all those approved?
Aye. Thank you for coming. Kevin's always a pleasure. Thank you.